if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning. And welcome to, afternoon by the time this goes up with our new system. And welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. You ever watch something, and as you're watching, you're like, oh shit, this is going to piss people off? Because that's exactly where I was when I was watching this episode of The Acolyte. It's this idea that, and again, as usual, full spoilers follow, so don't be mad at me if you haven't watched it yet and you're looking for what it is. Really what we have here is, I've talked about this before, when we talk about The Bad Batch, when we talk about The Mandalorian, when we talk about basically anything Star Wars related in the aftermath of what was that other one? In the aftermath of Rise of Skywalker. It's about getting a bunch of pieces that don't really fit together to fit together and make the Rise of Skywalker make sense, for lack of a better word. Because fundamentally the issue is the Rise of Skywalker does not fit into the world as established up until that point in both the movies and in the expanded universe, which leaves them in an awkward position, especially considering that the big thing where it's like we're going to get rid of the old EU and everything's going to be equally canon is that, it fundamentally can't all be equally canon if it's if it's this disparately different. And what you have to end up dealing with is, okay, so how do we fit, say, Operation Cinder, which is the example I always go to. Operation Cinder doesn't make a ton of sense in the context of, but the Emperor isn't actually dead, and the Emperor was planning to clone himself. So in that way, this is something that does, that's why you end up with, Alphabet Squadron, the third book there, which was Victory's Price, ending off with, okay, so it's the lead into the Battle of Jakku, which, an explanation as to why Operation Cinder happens from the Imperial standpoint, and how it works, kind of in that context. So, to be clear, I've never seen a hitchhiker in my life until right now. Wow. So, where we are with this right now is continuing to try and take some of the weirder concepts and kind of mesh them together. And that's kind of where this whole thing is. This is the episode with the origin story of Osha and May, who are the leads in the show. In the main show, both played by Amanda Stenberg, who played Rue in the Hunger Games, and where they came from, and what happened all those years ago that led to May going on this revenge tour, and Osha joining and then falling out of the Jedi Order. And it turns out they're related to the Night Sisters. Which is one of those things that I'm like, can we just fucking stop with the fucking Night Sisters for like 5 fucking minutes? Like, there are two things that, like, I'm so tired of seeing in Star Wars media at this point, and it's the fucking Night Sisters of Dathomir, or whatever fucking planet they were on in Ahsoka, in that other galaxy. Like, it's that, and the what's it called? Who's the other one? The planet of Tatooine. Where it's like I'm looking at the information about Outlaws. It's like, oh, cool, you have to go to Tatooine. And I'm like, wow, we haven't seen that ever. But yeah, so the point is, like, we find out that these are the Night Sisters. They've been exiled. They've been put on this other planet. They created life, and not through the usual conventional means. No, they used their ability to manipulate the Force to put in to create life. And in this case, those two immaculately conceived children, the twins, were May and Osha. And the two of them, are very powerful in the Force. So, all that notwithstanding. Now, I think there are 2 things in play here. Well, 3, but let's start with the first one. The first one is, very clearly, this is the beginning of the Immaculate Force Conception thing that created Anakin Skywalker. Like, that is the very clear, beginning of this, where it's like, when they talk to the Night Sisters, it's like, where's their father? They don't have a father. And then later on, we hear one of the mothers, whose name I'm forgetting, says, you carried them, but I created them. Which is, again, it's that same, kind of thing that, like, we ended up with Palpatine doing in Shmi Skywalker. So they're doing that, and it's interesting that that's happening. And then beyond that, there's the 2 of them. One who's more acclimated to the light side, one who's more acclimated to the dark side. And I think what we're looking at is, this is designed to be a synchronization of the idea of both the Immaculate Force Conception that the Force will use to create, that you can manipulate the Force to create someone who will be able to bring balance to it, and the idea of the Force Dyad, which was from The Rise of Skywalker. And I think that's fundamentally what this is trying to fuse together, those 2 ideas. Like, this idea of the Force Dyad, you have these 2 people equally powerful in the Force, one light, one dark, who are, who are inextricably tied together, and that is what Osha and Osha and May are. They're actually twins, though, unlike Rey and Ben, who are separated by about a decade. Which is something I got yelled at, like, fucking years ago over. It's like, oh, I said they're gonna be the new Jason and Jaina, and it's like, oh, what, they're twins? That's a long fucking thing. And then it's like, when the book for Rise of Skywalker came out, and it was like, these 2 are a dyad bound in the Force. They're twins, if only not by time, or some shit like that. And it's like, I was like, I would like an apology from anyone who shat on me for that. But the point is, if we're trying to marry these 2 concepts together, that's not, I don't think, a terrible idea, considering we are dealing with some more esoteric aspects of the Force. Like, the Force isn't just something you use as a weapon. The Force isn't just something you use to jump really high, or run really fast, or push shit, or pull a lightsaber back to you when you're fighting. No, the Force is this all-powerful, energy field that exists through the entire universe. And using it for other things like this make a lot of sense. So, all of that said, if we have these 2 ideas that are kind of being married together, where does that leave the prophecy? Because, and the other thing I have is, they talk about exile. Are they talking about these Night Sisters were exiled from their galaxy, or are they just exiled from Dathomir for doing this? And then the other thing is, too, I think this decision to tie this to the origins of the Sith, or the re-emergence of the Sith, is a really interesting idea. Because there was a the episode of the episode of Rebels that deals with the it deals with the world between worlds. We see the Emperor using some kind of dark magic, and I think that that's kind of what this is trying to do. Is that the Emperor, and when he says, like, the Sith is a pathway to abilities most would consider unnatural, like, it would make sense to me that there was someone who, you know, was teaching this. And I think, too, it's like, when you think light and dark, like, there's no equivalence between... There's no equivalence between the, you know, like the ability of the... There's no Jedi ability that's equal to, you know, creating and creating life. So that never really feels like, if you think about it, it never really feels like something that's like, this is a logical expansion of... I mean, even if you go to the most ridiculously absurd degree of what a Jedi can do, there's no... It doesn't feel like it's in synchronicity with the rest of what the Jedi can do. Like, oh, and then there's something up there that's equally absurdly powerful that only one or two Jedi can do. That doesn't really exist. Even in the expanded universe. Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I could be wrong. But the idea that it's you're using a kind of dark magic combined with the Force to do this does make a lot of sense. And I think that this is the kind of thing where it's like, look, this is explaining that weird part of Star Wars. This idea that, like, oh no, Anakin was immaculately conceived and that was done by Palpatine. And I think kind of laying out, but like, if you think about it, it's like, there's no real reason why the Sith should be able to do that. If anything, like, if we're going to take light and dark creation and destruction, and we have what the Jedi can do, and then you look at what the Sith can do, where it's like, the Sith exclusive abilities are like, I mean, choking isn't a Sith exclusive ability. I mean, I guess anyone could choke someone with the Force, but like, lightning is a Sith exclusive ability. I think there were like one or two Jedi that could use lightning, but by and large, that is a Sith exclusive ability. And that is exclusively an ability for destruction and for death. Why should they also have on that side the ability to create life? And it is because it's not really the dark side, manipulating the dark side of the Force. It is using this dark magic within the confines of the Force to, in a way, beyond that. And I do buy, considering everything we know about Palpatine, that he would be very interested in these esoteric, like, you know, things, which is something where it's like, we talk about the analogies between the Empire and the Nazis, and the First Order and the Nazis, and all of that. Hitler was very into his, you know, into the myths and the legends and like the occult and stuff like that. To have Palpatine kind of in that same role does make a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. And look, I think that this is an interesting expansion, and I think this is going to be misinterpreted by a lot of people, considering that, like, there was that line, you know, the Sith are here, and then there's that, you know, people went to, like, oh, well, Kai ID Mundi says in Phantom Menace, like, oh, the Sith haven't been seen for centuries. And then my thing is, like, yes, historically, in the prequels, the Jedi were 100% on top of things and did everything right. They didn't make any fuck-ups at all, besides, like, what? Like... And then early on in this show, they do lay the groundwork. And people are still complaining, like, oh, well, how did the Jedi not know about it years later? And in, I think it was episode 1, Vernestra Rose says, we can't let anyone know about this. Because if our enemies, our political enemies, find out that there's a Jedi who's turned against us, or that there's someone who's manipulating the dark side of the Force or is using the Force to kill other people, and they're not a Jedi, this is something that's going to empower our political enemies against us. And again, this show is laying a lot of groundwork, and we've talked about what Star Wars has done in the past. It is established more context for what we already know, and that's where Star Wars works best. Looking at this is just doing that before Phantom Menace. And we're setting the political stage for Phantom Menace to happen the way it does. And I think that they do a great job of that here. They do a fantastic job of that here. And still, like, a lot of the episode I'm not super thrilled about. Like, there's some spotty visual effects moments that I'm like, oh, that's questionable. Like, the really old woman, I was like, is that CGI? Like, is there a reason you couldn't just do this with prosthetics? Because this looks awful in CGI. And then, like, when Sun is rescuing Osha, it's like, that moment doesn't look great. But yeah, my other big issue with this is I think it paints May too villainous way too early. It paints May as like, oh, this is someone who is very clearly presupposed to the dark side. And I think that, like, if we're at this point here, and my new assertion of dyad is accurate, then maybe it's not a, maybe it's not a, a moment of her turning. Maybe that doesn't happen. I still think it will. Especially if this is a multi-season show, I still think it will happen, but we'll have to see. But we'll wrap up there for today. This week we have Inside Out 2, the new Pixar movie, and we have on Saturday or Sunday, I gotta figure out when I'm gonna put the episode up, we're gonna be covering the Tribeca Games Showcase. I'll be going out on Saturday to play some of the new games there. That'll be over on the backlog files. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.